My name is Will, and I am an alcoholic. I want to thank you guys for inviting me here tonight. I want to thank Brad for inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to be of service. Each and every one of you guys being here tonight are helping me stay sober 100%. It's nice. I was thinking about this today, that it's actually really nice to have known ahead of time. He would say that it's short notice, but it's nice to know ahead of time that I was going to be standing at this podium tonight. The two other times that I've stood at the podium here at the Wilder building were like, I had no idea. And the first time I should have known, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, a friend of mine, he was chairing a meeting, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be supportive, so I'm going to go help him chair that meeting or just be there. Like, I thought I was just going to be there. He was going to chair the meeting for the first time. And he asked me to come, and it could have been lack of communication, or maybe I just wasn't listening, because that's a thing that I do. And he was chairing the meeting, but I was the discussion leader, and I had no idea. And I was sitting in the chairs. This is when the podium was on the other side. And then he introduced me, and I was like, got it. And I think that's really cool, knowing what I know about Alcoholics Anonymous now and my experience going to meetings all over the East Coast, you know, as far as Texas, from Austin, Texas to Connecticut and everywhere in between, to be honest with you. The autonomy aspect of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? The fact that, you know, the message is the message and the steps are the steps, but the home group has, you know, the reign to be able to set things up, whether it's, you know, discussion leaders or, you know, chips or stuff like that. I think that's really cool. My sobriety date is November 22nd, 2019. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. These are men who are rooted in the solution and extremely in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believe that the knowledge has trickled down to me, and I try to do my best to trickle it down to others, because that's what you guys taught me to do here. I have a home group. I'm very proud to say that I'm a home group member of the Dunn Group in Dunn, North Carolina. We are the third oldest group in the state of North Carolina. We will be celebrating, AO will be 90 this year. We'll be celebrating 79 years, and that'll be in December. And I've been sober long enough now to see the ebb and flow of that group. Like when I got there and when I got sober, we had quite a few home group members. And then after a couple of years, like I think at one point there was 3 of us. And now within the last couple of years, like I've seen that come back too. And now, you know, we've got maybe 10 or 12, something like that. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous, right? People come in and people go, but I don't have to make that decision. You know, I will say that I really don't speak a lot on my experience. I talk a lot about the strength and the hope aspect. I can tell you that I didn't grow up. I can't speak for anybody else, but I didn't grow up saying, man, I can't wait till I piss my life away and earn a seat in AA. I didn't feel that way. I just didn't, man. And nowadays I am a really grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because truth be told, and I don't say this lightly, I have become and am continuing to become the man of my dreams through Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I mean by that is that, you know, that guy in my head that I saw as an example growing up, whether it was, you know, friends, fathers, or just like the man I thought I could be or I wanted to be, I had absolutely no idea how to do any of that. And none of that was happening until I got sober through Alcoholics Anonymous. And now, like I said, it has happened and is continuing to happen, because like even today, I'd look around at my life, I say, wow, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy, man. I come from a military family. So I want to say this being here tonight is really full circle for me. This is really full circle for me. I'm from here. I grew up here. I grew up a little bit all over the place being from a military family, but Southern Pines is home to me, man. My daughter lives with her mother during the week, just a few blocks from here. I mean, I drive down these roads and my life flashes by my eyes. All the memories, man. A lot of them good, a lot of them not, to be honest with you. And originally there was a guy who was going to speak here tonight. And what a blessing it is, he just had a beautiful baby girl. And a friend of mine asked if I could speak I think it was yesterday. And that's full circle for me, man, because the first speaker meeting that I ever went to was that man that was going to be speaking here tonight. And that just meant a lot to me when I kind of correlated that and brought it back, right? But I come from a long line of alcoholics. Now, I will say this, that I identify as an alcoholic for two reasons. First and foremost, that my life is in these pages. My life has literally been seen in these pages. The first time that I opened up the big book at Samaritan Colony, and we started reading through those pages, and I was just like, wow, this is how I feel or how I felt or the behavior that I've done or all these things. My life is in these pages. That every time that I had saw alcoholic or alcoholism, it was just like gray for me. I also say that because I was told when I got here that everything that I knew and anything I knew about doing it my way has to stop. Because the reality of my story is I don't really have a lot of experience with drinking, right? I just don't. I will say that alcohol was always prevalent in my life from a very early age, and at the end before my sobriety date, alcohol was really heavy. That's for sure. But out of respect for AA, I talk about alcoholism and alcohol in general. I was born in Panama. I was born in Central America. My mother grew up in Central America. She was born in Costa Rica. Her parents were missionaries. Really, really good people. When my grandfather died, my grandfather was one of those men that I had on the pedestal growing up that was like, I want to be like that guy one day. The night before I went to Samaritan Colony, I was on the phone with my mother, and she told me that my grandfather got sober at 32 years old, the same age that I got sober, at 32 years old through Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I knew that he grew up in Chicago and had a rough and tough life. I didn't know a lot about it, but I knew that that was part of his story. But I never knew that he was a member of AA. And I had never known him to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I think he got sober in AA and then really moved on to the church. He worked for the Panama Canal for about 40 years. And that man touched so many people's lives that even years after he died, my grandmother was receiving letters in the mail about people hearing about his death and just giving condolences. That's the kind of guy that he was, And my mother got married down in Central America. We moved to Florida for a couple years. My sister was born. We went back to Panama. And when my mother got remarried, she got remarried back to a military guy, special forces guy, if you know any of these type guys, right? Great guys. I've grown up around them my whole life. Type A personalities. Drinking is heavy in this culture. My father was my stepfather, but I call him my father because my actual dad really wasn't around much. Don't know him. Don't know him well, at least. He was a home brewer, so he made beer at the house. This was early 90s, so we were super high tech, man. We had CO2 taps with 3 or 4 fridges in the garage, and he would make sodas for us kids, and I was the kid, and all the kids in the neighborhood would come over so we could pour sodas. But next to that was 3 or 4 or 5 different types of home brew. And I don't remember seeing my parents stumbling drunk, but I definitely in hindsight can say that when that man was not at work or TDY, it was 6 a.m. and he was pouring. And he was pouring all day long. You know what I mean? And I think that, maybe he had some problem drinking. I can't identify that for him, but for sure, that was what I saw all around me. It's just normal. It was just the culture, you know what I mean? We moved to D.C. after Panama. He got promoted to lieutenant colonel. We come down here to Southern Pines in 98 or 99. And I was a problem child, man, growing up. I mean, it's just pretty uniform. You hear it at a lot of speaker meetings. Never felt like I fit in, always trying to be somebody. I can say for sure that before I found drinking or other substances, sports made me feel good about me. Sports made me feel good about me, specifically hockey. I excelled at playing hockey. I remember that feeling when everyone was just giving me the pat on the back, or the whole team was relying on me, or people were going up to my mom afterwards and saying, that was your son? I fed on that, man. I absolutely fed on that. I just didn't know it. It just made me feel good about me. And I had grown up in this time, early 90s, mid 90s, where doctors were trying all these new drugs and stuff, and they were always trying to throw medicine at me for depression or all these other things. They were trying to identify something that was wrong with me. I had started going to actual institutions as early as 5th grade. Some of them outpatient, some of them inpatient, just due to my behavior, man, because I was a bad kid. And like I didn't have a bad heart, is what I know now, but I was just angry. And I didn't know what to do with my feelings. And I found that outlet, whether it was treating other people like crap or through sports. And by the time I got here we go again, I moved to a new town and I'm trying to fit in. And by the time that 7th grade came, and a lot of the kids that I was hanging around just happened to be a little bit older than me. And if you grew up around here, man, you knew we don't have much to do, man. We party. That's our truth, you know, and that's what happened for me. So I found mind or mood altering substances really, really early in my life. I was about 13 when I had that aha moment, and from the jump, it was on me. I mean, this was not gradual for me. I just didn't know it at the time. I immediately had the obsession. I immediately would be sitting in school and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't wait for the weekend when my friends and I would get together and do those things. I was doing it every night on my own, 13, 14 years old. I said that my dad was a home brewer and I was always trying to fit in, and I had that experience, that memory. I would think it was like 7th or 8th grade, and I gathered all the neighborhood kids and I was like, hey, I got access to beer. And I had this, I was in a Boy Scout troop for a very short amount of time because I got kicked out. But I had this like Kelty hiking book bag that I went on this one hiking trip with, and we packed that thing with it. I mean, we just had cases of homebrew growing up in the garage, and I just filled it as high as I could. And I took all those guys across the street in Sandhurst South, and you could hear me and 4 or 5 other neighborhood kids that are 7th or 8th grade walking into the woods, clink, 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 clink. I'll never forget it, man. And I remember that feeling of facilitating and being like, yeah, I'm the guy. And I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be liked because I didn't like me. I did not like me. And that would continue for the majority of my life until I found Alcoholics Anonymous and I started learning who I was. I started learning who I was and also who I'm not. You know, being truthful with myself. And that had progressed, and it progressed really quickly. Again, hanging out with kids that were older than me. I had dropped out of high school by the time I was in 10th grade, and all my friends were now freshmen in college. So I'm like 16 years old. I'm not going to school. My mom's divorced again. I'm the man of the house. She can't hold any reign on me whatsoever, and I'm going to do whatever it is I want. And so I'm partying. I'm 16, 17, and I'm going from UNC Wilmington to Appalachian State and every major university in between with my friends who are now freshmen or sophomores at college, and just living it up. Living it up, man. Living in dorms for like a month at a time, or like apartments, and like it just progressed so quickly for me, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it. But I can say that by the time that I was 18 years old, I'd started having some repercussions, and this thing was on me to the point that I knew it, and I wanted to stop, and I couldn't, and I could not. But I just wasn't ready, and it's amazing what it looks like for me to be ready. And it's also amazing how, like, the outlet that any of us get here, the outlet that I got here, is different than could be any one of you sitting in here tonight, right? And what it takes is what it takes. I would have thought that my friends dying around me, whether in my arms or like close by, or like, I mean, those are my experiences at 18, 19, mid-20s, or going to prison by the time I was 23, not for anything serious. I don't have any felonies, no serious drug charges, but I just can't stop. And I don't take anything serious in my life. And eventually probation officers are going to say, ship them up the road. And that's my truth. I just didn't take anything serious. And eventually it was almost like I always felt like I had this magic cloak around me. Now, either you couldn't see me, I wasn't going to get in trouble, or it was just going to work out. Because it always had, to be honest with you. For me, I had a lot of enabling in my life growing up, whether it was, through my mother or family friends or things like that, or even women, as my sponsor tells me, hostages. They were hostages in my life that I would use and abuse mentally and emotionally, and things would just happen. And eventually it'd work itself out. Until it didn't. I had a good period there. I heard this shared in a room from a good friend of mine once, and he called it a good season. It was a good season. I grew up in a broken home. I grew up without a father, and by the time that I was 23 and I had gotten home from doing a bid, my girlfriend at the time got pregnant, and I thought that was going to fix me. I thought as much as I wanted to be a good father, and I didn't have that in my life, and I said, I'm going to set that tone. I'm going to change that. I'm going to break that cycle. I thought that little girl was going to fix me, and unquestionably, if you have kids, you know this to be true. Children show up with love that you don't have to bring to the table. They give it to you. It's theirs, and they give it to you. I didn't have to do that. That little girl changed my life. And she was about 6 months. She was premature. She was born at 27 weeks. She was like 2 pounds, 10 ounces. She was up at Moore Regional. She was right at the cusp of almost having to go to Chapel Hill, but she got to stay at Moore Regional. And here I am just out running and gunning, not taking anything serious. It's almost like that wasn't real at the time. But when she came home and now she was ours, okay, it's real. And she was about 6 months old. Her mother and I looked at each other and we were like, dude, we got to do something different. So we did. And we weren't sober, but it wasn't as bad as it was. I'll say that. And I spent about 7 years completely enabled, not really doing anything with my life, but being a father to the best of my ability at the time. You know, I was caddying. It's really the only real work I'd ever done around here growing up was working in the golf course industry. It's club, service industry is really all we have around here, right? And I was caddying seasonally, and I was home with my daughter and my girlfriend, and it was almost like I relied on that to keep me straight and narrow. You know, my friends that were used to seeing me in the streets or whatever, they weren't seeing me anymore. People might see me around town, like, hey, man, where you been? I'm like, I cleaned my life up. Actually, a lot of these people thought that I got sober, and I didn't. I just was having a good season. And in 2017, and like this is what Alcoholics Anonymous does for me, right? Is that it prepares me for life to show up on life's terms. You know, that's why I want to stay here. You know, the obsession to drink or use is gone nowadays in my life. But life shows up, and I need to be ready for that. I have to be ready for that. I want to be ready for that. But in 2017, I was not ready for any of that. So my best friend dies in my arms. My mom loses our childhood home. She moves to middle America. And then my girlfriend leaves me, and I'm stuck now being a single dad because we're immediately week on, week off. And I don't know what to do with myself. I have no idea how to live. I've never really been responsible for anything. And that was the mark for sure where things just went, boop. And within 2 years, I had not been in trouble since 2010. Within 2 years, I had back in trouble, back on probation. The good season had ended as far as the things that I was putting in my body and that I was doing. And it inevitably ended up with me being homeless, with literally nothing, walking around in the streets of Southern Pines. And, nowadays I'm so grateful for that. I really believe that the divine intervention that has always been part of my life, it's funny, my human-sized brain trying to comprehend what God's will is for me. It's a joke, right? And hindsight is always 20/20. And I can see it a little clearer. But I know for a fact that the hit-and-run charge that I did on Highway 5 in 2018, I'm so glad that happened, man. I had my little girl in the back of the car. She was going to school out here off of 501, a little private school up the road. I was not drinking, at least, so I could have passed a field sobriety test. I had nothing in the car. I was licensed. I was insured. But when I ran into the back of that car, I ran. Because that's what I do. I don't face life head on. I don't face circumstances head on. When things get tough, I'm out. I'm not doing that. And it's funny, the police officer and I turned around in a gas station, they immediately see the tags. And then 20 minutes later, the detective calls me. He's a guy that I went to school with. He's like, yo, Will, what's going on, man? Turn yourself in, bud. And I'm like, well, we'll do that in the morning. So I'm back on probation by the beginning of 2019. And playing the game with them for a little while, but like I just didn't have it in me. I just didn't. Because I knew what was coming based off of my experience in my early 20s. I remember I went into that office one day and like, yeah, go do that with them in the cup. And she walked out of the office, and I went and sat in the front of it right there at the courthouse, and there was nobody around, and I looked around and I said, nah, I'm out. I ran again. And that would have been, I don't know, March of 2019. So I spent roughly 7 months absconder and found another hostage, playing games with my landlord on the rent. And this thing was so progressive, and it was like, even though I had not had the experience of getting clean and sober before, I could see how progressive it was, where that thing that I was doing that I'd put down for about 7 years, as soon as I picked it back up, and it got worse than it ever was before. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. I was caddying over at Pine Needles, and the car that I had broke down on the side of the road. Yep, leave that, we're good. And I'm walking back up to the apartment, and he's taking all my belongings out, and he's putting them in the back of a truck, and he says, look, man, I know the law's looking for you. You've got two options. Either you can cause some trouble, lose everything you own today, and call the law, and you can go to jail, or you can turn around, lose everything you own today, and go do whatever you want to do. Turn around, went straight to the bar. I was living right there on Pennsylvania Avenue. Walked straight to the bar. And I had said in the beginning, that like that time frame at this point, I was 31. And, from 14 to 31, alcohol just wasn't really prevalent because I felt like I kind of had some more control of these other things, even though it was always around me. But that summer, because again, I had spent so long, man, in the grips of this thing, trying to quit on my own, not being able to quit, in tears sometimes wanting to quit, and I just can't stop for years and years. I mean, literally the better part of 12 to 15 years, something like that. But it was that summer where I remember that I got to the point now where I'm down in a fifth of Jameson before 1 p.m., and I'm ready for more. And I remember that clear moment where I looked at that bottle and I said, son, you ain't ready for the beast you just opened. After all my experience with the grips of addiction at that point and knowing what was happening, and I just gunned it. I gunned it as hard as I could. There's two dates that are really important to me in my story. One is my sobriety date for sure. The second one is January 11th, 2020, and I'll get to that date. But, man, there was definitely a moment where I knew that I needed help, and it ended up with me being off of Roseland Road, hiding underneath 2 trash bags of clothes, everything that I owned, because everything that I'd lost, I was still working. I'd accumulated a couple other pairs of clothes or pairs of shoes. The hostage that I took kicked me out. We were living over there by Pinehurst Lake, and, she was living over there. I was just staying with her. I'd been up for a few days. Like I said, I'd been absconder for months, and she said, the law is on the way. Well, time to go. And I grabbed those 2 trash bags, and I ran across the street into the woods, and now it's kind of dusk, and I get down there. There's a little pond, and I put one over my feet, and I put one over my head. I'm clutching the bag, and I'm clutching the bottle, and I spent hours and hours and hours in that very position doing those things. And it had progressed to the point where it's almost like a psychosis, to where like now there's cops in the woods, and there's blue lights everywhere. There's a roadblock right here. I can see the flashlights. And now here's a helicopter. Now this was like the middle of the night. I don't know what time, but it was dusk whenever I went in there, and it was daylight by the time that I walked out of there. And sometime very early in the morning, as it just progressed, fear, it hit me. That helicopter that was up there that had a spotlight on me was not a helicopter. That was the moon. That was the moon. There's not a single officer in these woods. I have a misdemeanor absconder warrant for a hit and run charge. They're not investing that kind of time and effort into me. And as much as I was in the grips of that psychosis in that moment, dude, it was just like, bam, right in my head. And then I went, and I looked up, and saw where I was at and what I was doing, what I was holding. I said, oh my God, I need help. And that was the first time in my life that I really felt like I can't do this on my own. I need someone to help me. And again, on the experiences that I'd had, I would have thought that like I would have asked for help. I'd had friends who tried to get sober early on, like 18, 19. I remember seeing chips on their dressers or like a big book here. I just wasn't one of those, man. I got it. He definitely needed help, for sure. But I just wasn't one of those, is what I thought. He's also dead now, too. And sometimes I ask why, again, me trying to comprehend God's will, but, why is it that some of my very best friends that I grew up with, that we couldn't do this together, That's my truth, I'll never have the answer for that, but that's neither here or there. That was sometime in the middle of November, early November, and my sobriety date wasn't, but, weeks after that. But I can tell you for sure, it's funny, when I was talking to my stepdaughter today, there was a homeless man. I live in Rayford. We're in Fayetteville all the time. There was a homeless man. We were talking about, people trying to get help. And, she was saying, well, maybe some people, they want the cops to be called on them because they don't want to be homeless. And in my mind, she doesn't know this part about me yet in her life. Maybe one day she will. And in my head, I'm thinking, girl, if you only knew, because that was me. Because on November 21st in 2019, I had been sleeping in the Campbell House Park. It had been 20-something degrees outside. Those 2 trash bags I was carrying around, I left them somewhere around town because it's just too much. And I had been sleeping outside in the pine straw for weeks at this point. Anyone that I could ask for help, I just wasn't willing to ask anymore. To be honest with you, dude, I am broken. I don't know what to do. And it was November 21st, and I was sitting there, and I was drinking a cup of coffee right there at the Campbell House, and I was like, dude, this would be a great day to turn yourself in, man, because what do you got left, dude? What do you got left? And about 10 or 15 minutes later, I was surrounded by like 5 or 6 detectives and Southern Pines police officers, and I was like, here's my ID. I have a warrant for my arrest. Here's my bag that has this in it. Do what you got to do. And I remember sitting in the back of that car like, oh, thank you, God. I don't know what's coming next, but I know it's better than this. Real short term, I had some opportunities to not stay sober, and I made a decision. I was like, dude, I'm done. I'm good. I'm done. I got out January 6, 2020. January 7th, I went back to work on a construction crew that I was working on, and just so happened to be the guys that were on this crew at this time were all guys in recovery. They were all guys in sobriety. Now, I believe that this is divine intervention in my life, and this week set the precedent for the rest of my life. I believe that in Alcoholics Anonymous, when God sees something inside of me or any of us, that there's full conceit, like I'm done. Please take this. There's a bone that's thrown. I believe it. I've heard it in so many stories. It's definitely true in mine. Now, I've never been to a meeting in my life. I don't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous. I know that I'm clean and sober, and I want to stay clean and sober, but I'm still homeless, and I don't know what to do. And these guys, I was so full of pride and ego, I didn't really want to tell them about it, but they got the drifts, man. And they were like, do you want to come to a meeting? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I got nowhere else to go. I'm living outside still. And I go to a meeting on January the 7th, and I go to a meeting every night that week. January 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And on one of the guys that, and this is like such a powerful, this really speaks on the power of prayer, this aspect of my story. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. For me, this is my story. Buying into a power greater than me and a higher power and God in general was not hard for me. It was not hard for me. The way that all these things played out and just boom, 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 so quickly, I was like, okay, yep, I'm with you. January the 10th, this guy was living in the Bethesda house. Rest in peace, Miss B. She let me sit down and talk to her. I was trying to get into sober living because I'm homeless and I'm clean and sober and I don't know how to stay clean and sober and I need somewhere to live. And she listened to me and I told her the whole spiel and she was like, well, have you been in treatment? I said, well, I haven't been in treatment. I don't even think I'm a candidate for treatment, to be honest, because I don't have any money. And she was like, okay, well, I can't take you here because we take guys from a treatment center. Here's a phone number. I want you to call this phone number on Monday morning because they're not there on the weekend. Okay? Great. So here I am. I'm walking around the streets of Aberdeen. I'm clean and sober. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's coming. But I do know that I have found these meetings, and there's people in these meetings that literally took me in with open arms. I could identify with them. My buddy said I was a jam band fan. This is true. And the first meeting that I ever went to, I saw a couple that are still in these rooms, and I was wearing my Dead shirt, and he just immediately started talking to me about the Grateful Dead and all these things, like, these are my people. And I felt so comfortable and safe. And every single morning, I was waking up outside saying, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do. But every single night I was leaving those meetings like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly what I was going to do. And that really didn't come until after the next week or two. But January the 10th, I talked to her. She gives me a phone number. I had made a little money on the construction crew that week, and I went and bought a tent. Now, at least I had a tent, because prior to this, I was literally sleeping outside. And by the grace of God, in 2020, in the beginning of January and pretty much the month of January, it was beautiful outside. Like 60, 70 degrees every day. That's the truth. And I went to Walmart. My sister had picked me up and dropped me off over there. And, you know, these are people in my life that, like, we love you, dude, but you got to figure it out. And to be honest, I was over asking for help. Man. I'm tired of burning everybody. I'm just tired. So I went and bought a tent and went and set that tent up in a dog park behind the Walmart, Aberdeen. And I, so full of pride and ego, I live here, I'm from here. I know that's a very busy place on the weekend, so I walk as far back as I thought I could go. I'm on the outskirts of the dog park. Nobody's going to see me at least. And it was, I know for a fact that same moon that I was running from in November was big and bright that night. It was 1, 2, 3 in the morning, I don't know. On January the 11th, 2020, and I got on my hands and my knees and I said, God, please help me, because I don't know what to do and I want to stay sober and everything in my life is broken. Please help me. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart, dude. And I woke up that next morning, January the 11th. Come to find out, I'm smack dab in the middle of the dog park. There is every single person you could imagine walking around me. And I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God. I was still smoking cigarettes at the time, and I'm out in my tent. I'm smoking a cigarette. Now, at this point, they'd given me a big book, and I had been sober for a few days. So I picked up a couple of chips at this point, and I'm holding these chips, and I'm holding the big book, and I'm like trying to read through it like I know what any of this means. But I know for a fact that I am where I am because I'm an alcoholic and an addict. No question. I am where I am today in the sense of in that moment, it hit me hard, bud. And I could not run from it. So there was a man, he was walking up with his dog, and I go run and hide in the tent. I'm like, God, I got to get out of here, man. So I get back out of the tent, and I thought he had walked by. Now, at this point, that man his dog is as close to where that table is, and that man is about where Mike is, and he's walking straight up to me. And I can't run at this point. And he walks up, and I just like verbally vomit on him, and I tell him my name, and I made a very clear point to tell him, hey, I'm clean and sober. Because like the only people who can be living outside are not clean and sober, but I want you to know that I am not drunk or high. And I just told him the whole story. He didn't say anything. He just listened. And then he told me who he was. And his name was Billy Thomas. And if you don't know Billy Thomas is the financier for Pilgrim's Promise. It's connected to Samaritan Colony. That's the phone number that's in my pocket that I'm supposed to call on Monday. And he was like, dude, I'm going to see what we can do about trying to get you some help. And I had also talked to a guy on the phone that night before named Chase, who works for Billy. And they were going to meet each other for lunch that afternoon on that Saturday. And unannounced to them, they were going to meet each other to tell each other about me. There's this guy, he's homeless, he's clean and sober. And like he had met me, could have been anybody in the world, dude. It could have been anybody. He lives nowhere near where that dog park is. What's Billy T doing over here in that moment? I don't know. But I believe for a fact that's divine intervention in my life. Because the night before I got on my hands and knees in tears and said, God, please help me. Please help me. Because I was ready, dude. I was ready. So that next night, Chase had given me a ride to the colony where I got to meet the director, and I'd heard people talk that week going through meetings about tools in the toolbox. And I said to him, I said, dude, I don't even have a toolbox. I don't know anything about tools to put in it. And to be honest with you, at that moment, I wanted to stay clean and sober. I didn't know if I needed to go to treatment, but I knew I needed to go there to get a house, to get somewhere to live. So sign me up. And if you know anything about Pilgrim's Promise, a couple times a year, they go and they do these mission trips. They've been to South Africa, Costa Rica. And I believe that this is part of God's plan for me too, that it just so happened to be that they were going to Costa Rica for like 2 weeks starting that Monday. That I wasn't a candidate to go to the safe house because they were going to be gone. And I called Samaritan Colony again on Monday because HP had said, well, call us tomorrow. I called them Monday at the exact moment they told me to call us tomorrow. I called them Tuesday, called them Wednesday, and by Wednesday they said, I think we can help you. We're going to get you a bed, but it's not going to be right now. And I waited on that bed for another almost month, living in that tent. Now, at this point, I'd moved the tent. The tent went behind Chick-fil-A, what is now the Target parking lot, but it all just used to be a bunch of woods back there. I remember when I got my license and I drove over to see my daughter that I had not seen in like a year and a half at this point. I was living in the halfway house, and I remember pulling up to where that parking spot was in the back of Chick-fil-A, and that tent was still in the woods, and I could see it. I think somebody was living in it, actually. And I just remember this like really full circle feeling that was really powerful of like, bud, keep doing what you're doing, because whatever you're doing is working. And Alcoholics Anonymous is working, and all these decisions that you're making in your life are working, because look where you were just not too long ago. Like I had that experience of not having to think about it, but looking at it being like, dang, this is so cool. It was really powerful. So I got there, and when I got there, to be honest with you, man, my life started at the top of the hill, and my life ended at the back of that lake. Any of my fears or my worries or concerns, I left them, either here or there. I tell people who don't know anything about Samaritan Colony that I went to a treatment center that was a faith-based 12-step treatment center that was essentially like AA boot camp. Because what it did for me is it kind of preset for me. It gave me like these bearings to be high speed by the time that I got into the real world, to kind of have some direction for Alcoholics Anonymous. And few of you guys in here know where I'm talking about. I went to a halfway house in Dunn, North Carolina, a place called Elmore Blackley. And it was at one point, it's no longer open, and rest in peace. Miss Pat, the woman that ran it for over 30 years. She just died not long ago, just a couple months ago. She was like a second mom to a lot of us. But the men at the colony suggested that I go there, and I trusted them, those men, with my life. And they said, anything that you're going to get in your life, you need to work for, because you know everyone back home. Because you have opportunities back home, because you have family back home. If you really want to change, and you want to change at a fast pace, and this is just my story, go to Dunn, where you don't know anyone, and you don't know anything. And that worked for me. And this recovery home was the strictest recovery home, one of the strictest in the state of North Carolina. For the most part, anywhere we went together in a van. We made dinner for each other and alternated throughout the week. Any meetings we went collectively in a van. That door locked every night at 10:30, and I needed that. I needed that structure. And they had told me there, because I didn't want to go to Dunn. What the heck is in Dunn, man? And I can honestly say, because I believe a lot of divine intervention took place in my life, but I had a decision whether or not to go to Dunn. They would have set me up here. That was the best decision that I have ever made in my life. Making that choice was the very best decision that I've ever made in my life, because it brought me to my home group. It brought me to my sponsor. It brought me into old school AA. It brought me to my job. I mean, I could keep going, dude. But I could have not made that decision. And they said, listen, go there 6 months. If you want to come back, do that. I got there, and again, these men trusted her with my life, so I vicariously trusted her with my life. She said, will you commit to a year? And I said, absolutely. And I did 366 days in that recovery home, and my sponsor and her suggested, well, we suggest you go to an Oxford house. Now, at this point, I'd got a good job. I'd saved a little bit of money, had gotten promotions and all these things, and I didn't have to go to the Oxford house, but they suggested I do for at least 6 months. 6 months, and one day I moved out, got into a relationship. Don't suggest that. That early on in sobriety, to be honest, but I surely didn't take that direction from my sponsor. And he'd mentioned earlier that we had lived together, and I was 2 years clean and sober. I was the GSR in my home group. I was living with a girl who I can't say was an alcoholic, but she sure liked the bottle. And I would be chairing meetings and have my drunk girlfriend in the corner, and people coming up to me afterwards like, and I'm like, yeah, I know. And I was not okay, man. I was not okay. Clean and sober for a couple years at this point. I walked into Sandalwood one night because I was too ashamed to do it at my home group. I walked into Sandalwood and I threw it all on the table, dude. And I said, I am not okay. I am living with a drunk girlfriend. I'm supposed to be the GSR in my home group. I'm supposed to be sponsoring guys. I am not living right. I am not being honest. And I think that saved my life. I think that saved my sobriety in that moment, because the guys that were around me and my sponsor and those in my home group, they were worried, bud. They were worried. And having that experience shows me, how quick I can get off the beam. But what a blessing it is to have the direction of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. What a blessing it is to get to know me a little bit more, you know what I mean? I was so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to stay clean and sober. Listening or reading through the big book, fifth step, if we skip this vital step, we may not stay sober. Dude, I went to every memory I could because I don't want to go back. 12th step, nothing ensures sobriety as intensive work with another alcoholic. Dude, what do I got to do? And this is just my story. Intensive work for me could be that I go to work at 4 a.m. I'm a lead trainer for Food Line Distribution in Dunn, and which is crazy for a guy like me coming from the streets, man. But I'll work a 12, 14-hour day, and then I'll sit in Dunn for 2 or 3 hours so I can meet with a guy and read with him for another hour and a half, and then go to my home group. And I don't get home for 17 hours, maybe 3-4 days a week at one point in time in my sobriety. That's my story. And those are the things that have kept me sober. Those are the things that not have only kept me sober, but have brought me peace, true happiness in my life. And what amazing, and what it looks like today, I am an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous who still has a service position. I'm the CPCPI rep for my home group. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially community outreach, right? Doctor's office, lawyers' officers, jails, hospitals, things like that. That little girl in my life who's now 13 years old, she didn't see me for about a year and a half, and she's definitely known her father to not be sober. I get her every weekend. She knows without a doubt she can call her daddy and he'll be there for anything at any time. It don't matter. She has no question about that. I met a woman who is just the most amazing woman that I got to marry last year. That Alcoholics Anonymous brought me her, and I didn't meet her in here. She's not one of us. Alcoholics Anonymous has helped mold me in the kind of man that is desirable to a woman like that. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me her, and God, to be honest with you. We own a home. We have nice things. That's not the important things in my life, to be honest with you. I have 2 beautiful children in my life that are not mine through birth. They're mine through marriage and through God, that I have the opportunity to be a father to again. 5 and 9, the most wonderful kids, man. And I have that opportunity, and I don't take that for granted. And Alcoholics Anonymous and all these things within it bleed into my stepfatherhood or my fatherhood or my job or my marriage. And oftentimes I drop the ball on that stuff, man, because I'm still selfish and self-centered. And I can very quickly get so full of me that I don't want to hear this or I don't want to do that. And dude, I cannot put a price on the fact that I have a direction in my life today. For a guy like me that has only ever been a flaring flag in the wind, whichever way it blows is which way I go. Right? Whether it's in my emotions or my decision making, to not be in the grips of addiction today. But and we were actually just talking about it in here tonight. It has not been free. It is not free in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I pay with my time. Jackie said it just last night. Time is the word. I pay with my time and my effort and my ear. that's my truth. You know what I mean? And you know, I said earlier that we don't all get here the same way, you know. But for the most part, from what I've seen, is, you know, a lot of us leave here the same way. Quit coming to meetings, quit praying, not being honest. I'm living on a lie. I'm running on self-will, power, prestige, women, all these things. I put those above everything else, and all of a sudden I got it. And I've even watched it. I've been here just long enough now to have seen that happen a couple times. And all of a sudden, it's back. It's a good idea again. I got it. It'll be different this time. And I may not have had the experience in Alcoholics Anonymous before, but I have had the experience in my life of thinking it'll be different this time. And it never was. It never was. So I don't believe that lie. And I stay insulated to ensure that the thought that, you know, if it's a thought of drinking or using, it's fleeing. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really powerful stuff, man. But I'm a proud member of AA. And I choose to stay here. And to be honest, this thing is really simple. This thing is really simple. If I'm honest and open-minded and willing to ask for help. You know what I mean? And I just can't say enough about what this place has done for me, and a lot of you in this room that have done for me. You know what I mean? That's my truth. I started going to a big book study at that point. I mentioned that 2-year mark where I moved out from that girl and I moved in with my sponsor, and I really wasn't utilizing my sponsor for those first 2 years, but now I'm forced to because we live together. And that's my truth. And I started going to a big book study right after that, and he had already started the first 164, but I went to that big book study, you know, at least a couple times a month, and that changed my sobriety unquestionably. It gave me a better understanding of the big book, and what I learned is that it gave me a better understanding, so I can have a better understanding to explain it to the next man. And all the notes that are in here now, that's from that experience, you know, and I need that. Anytime that I sit down and I work the steps with somebody, I'm working the steps too. And I see it a little bit differently than I did the first time, you know, but coming to meetings ain't enough for me. I can tell you that is my truth. Coming to meetings is not enough for me. I have to be in the middle of this thing, and that looks like coming to meetings, being honest, open-minded, sharing, being of service. And I don't have to be sponsoring somebody to be of service, man. I could just show up early, make coffee, clean up afterwards. It's as simple as that. You know, it doesn't even have to be service in the rooms, to be honest with you. But for a guy like me, coming from where I came from, and as dark as it got, I'm really, really glad to be here. Let me tell you that. Thank you, guys.